Vale. ¿Puedo entrar antes de que se cierre la puerta? En plan, no, ¿verdad? Porque es como muy lejos.
I can't wait to tell this story to my co-workers, Stanley thought. How amusing they'll find it. Oh, won't we all just laugh and laugh at the time I thought everyone had gone missing?
¿Qué me falta?
Ok, otra vez falta la de darle que sí al de control mental.
Ah,
The embrace of an old friend. A weathered companionship that stands the test of time. Stanley clutched the bucket tightly to his chest and entered the door on his left.
Perdón, antes de pasar por la pizarra, solo quiero leer. Ok, dale. Nada más quería leer algo para decirte lo siguiente que puedo hacer.
Stanley, we must move on from this broom closet, simply because
no
I
voy a
have
hacer lo
no
mismo.
remaining stickers. If I did, you can guarantee... Coming to a staircase, Stanley and the bucket walked upstairs to the boss's office.
no sé, parece que la sexta no existe.
Stepping into his manager's office, Stanley was once again
tengo que poner otra vez
stunned to
acontece.
discover not an indication of any human life. Crushed by the weight of this revelation, Stanley may have broken down into an emotional dumpster fire if not for the soothing presence of the bucket. Even now, in his darkest of hours, did the bucket... But Stanley guessed the correct code by sheer luck. Was it that the bucket knew all along? Was the bucket guiding him?
Sí, el balde,
Yes,
Dios.
this is certainly the most logical explanation.
Ah, bueno, también me falta el de subir y bajar. Subir y bajar, subir
Es
y bajar.
verdad.
Vamos a hacer el
Va a
subir y
ser-
bajar.
Ok. Hasta que se te olvide que tienes que hacer el de darle prender.
Creo que sí. Va a pasar, pero bueno.
Wait, Stanley said to the bucket.
Para algo
Can we
estáis
go
aquí,
back
¿no?
up?
Para recordarme las
When I was
cosas.
pressing those keypad
Sí.
buttons, there was something very intriguing about the number 3. I want to go back so I can try pressing the number 3 again.
Hay al
Bien,
menos
número
un
3.
cerebro en esta llamada.
Por suerte. El número 3. Quiere que presione el número 3. Vamos a presionar el número 3.
Ah.
3, 3, 3, 3.
Here we are, said Stanley. Now I'm going to try out that number 3 button. He took the bucket over to the keypad and began absolutely slamming on the number 3 over and over and over. Well, he said, the number 3 is such a special button. I'm having the time of my life. Stanley looked expectantly at the bucket, but the bucket remained silent. This was a shock to Stanley, who had always felt such a connection with the bucket. How was this not as exciting to the bucket as it was to him? Once Stanley had had enough of the number 3, he got back in the elevator.
Pues vamos al ascensor. Para abajo.
Perhaps the bucket had missed something. Perhaps it had not seen how much joy Stanley got from slamming the number 3 repeatedly.
Es que es divertido. Copiar cosas 3 veces. Divertido. Y ahora para arriba.
No, 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 said Stanley to the bucket. You can't go on yet. Not till you understand how much the number 3 means
Vale,
to me.
vamos
You
a
and
la
I
tres otra
have
vez.
been through so much together, and I just want you to see what I see. Feel the happiness I feel. He smiled at the bucket, and the bucket said nothing.
Vamos a darle a 3 porque el balde quiere que le demos 3. Y pues darle 3.
No, tú quieres, el balde no quiere.
Pero si el balde dice que le demos al 3 y hay que darle al 3 y el 3.
No, el balde te
Here
está
we go, said
jugando.
Stanley. This time I'll really show you. He ran to the number 3 and began to wail on it like a musician on a beloved instrument, weaving a concerto of truth and passion. He wielded the number 3 like a fine artist would wield a paintbrush. He told stories through the number 3, stories of his dreams and hopes and fears. And the whole time, he looked to his bucket for a reaction of some kind. Anything to let him know that the bucket appreciated what he was doing. The
Vale.
bucket conveyed absolutely nothing at all. Only silence.
Qué simpático el balde.
Crushed by a wave of dejection, Stanley returned to the elevator.
Vale.
Stanley and the bucket were so close. They'd always been there for one another. Why suddenly could the bucket not connect with this passion of Stanley's? The question caused Stanley to ruminate the whole way down the elevator. He knew that there must be a way to get through to the bucket, to communicate fully with his dear friend. Surely there was a solution, mustn't there be?
Debería. ¡Y para arriba!
Said Stanley. I know what to do.
¿Ya lo sabe?
I know how to fully express this feeling in my heart. He decided right then and
Es
there
nuestro amigo,
that he
sí.
would hold a press conference where he would speak to the public on all matters relating to pressing the number 3 over and over.
Vale.
He would elaborate fully on what the number 3 meant to him and why he felt so alive when pressing it.
Perfecto.
Then the bucket would be able to see his joy through the eyes of others.
Oh.
It would get to see the world react to this discovery of Stanley's. And it would be through the public eye that the bucket would finally understand Stanley's work.
Ya que estamos.
For months, he advertised and marketed his press conference, building excitement around it, developing and rehearsing it, until it couldn't be refined a single measure further. When the big day arrived, Stanley was as prepared as he'd ever been for anything in his life. This was it.
3-3-3-3.
One last chance to win the bucket over. One opportunity to share a true connection with a loved one.
¡Pizza!
There was no one here.
Ahí va.
Nobody had
No.
come to the press conference to hear Stanley speak.
No,
To
qué
listen to him talk
triste.
about what it really means to press the number 3 on a keypad over and over.
Qué triste.
He was unloved, uninteresting, he was a failure. And in that moment, Stanley knew that the bucket would never again take him seriously.
Pobre Stanley.
There would be no connection, no deeper understanding. The bucket merely sat there in his arms, indifferent. And so it began that slowly, over many years, the two of them grew more and
No,
more
se
distant.
divorciaron.
They spoke less and less, neither wishing to state the obvious, that any sense of real respect between them had eroded since that day at the press conference. There would be no more games, no more long conversations about passion and pursuit, only a silence that consumed the space between friends. And Stanley, having for once in his life discovered the warmth and comfort of true companionship, was cast back into the unremarkable normalcy of loneliness.
Qué triste.
Tremebundazo.
Increíble.
All of his co-workers were gone.
Y
What
vamos
could it mean?
al último que voy a
Stanley
hacer,
decided
por
to
lo que
go to
veo,
the meeting
porque...
room. The bucket made Stanley
sí.
want to be a better man and a better co-worker. In time, perhaps, he would become both of those things. Stanley clutched the bucket tightly to his chest.
Bueno, te diría,
and
antes de que se me olvide,
entered
hacer ese que está quedando pendiente y otra cosa, y ya para cerrar, creo.
Vale.
Coming
Porque
to
creo que a
Stanley's,
partir de ahí no
Stanley
te va a
and the
quedar
bucket
mucho, y
walked
como
upstairs to the
para directo
boss's
sí que iría de hacerlo una vez.
Stepping into his manager's office,
No sé quién
Stanley
entra,
was
pero
once
bienvenido.
again stunned.
Hola, Carlos.
Discovered not an
Hola, Carl.
indication of any human
2,
life.
8, 4,
Stanley guessed the
5.
correct code by sheer luck. Was it that the bucket knew all along? Was the bucket guiding him? Yes, this is certainly the most logical explanation.
Por supuesto.
Exactamente. Muy majo el balde. Vamos para allá.
Stanley and the bucket walked straight ahead through the large door that read Mind Control Facility. lights rose on an enormous room packed with television screens. What horrible secret did this place hold? Stanley and the bucket both wondered to themselves.
Ego.
The monitors jumped to life, and Stanley nearly dropped the bucket in shock. Everyone in the office was being videotaped, monitored like guinea pigs. The bucket had never seen anything like this, and it
Muy
very
bien,
nearly
muy
burst into
interesante.
tears.
Quiero irme.
Stanley cradled it gently, reassuring it that everything would be fine. Was the bucket under the mind control facility's influence as well? Had the bucket been told to do things it didn't wish to do? What kinds of things does a bucket want to do or not want to do in the first place? These questions raced furiously in Stanley's feeble mind. No! He screamed into the bucket.
No!
He couldn't accept it. His own life in someone else's control? Never! He squeezed the bucket tighter. His one friend in the entire world. At this point, he could trust no one except for the bucket. But here was the proof. The heart of the operation. Controls labeled with emotions, happy or sad or content. Walking, eating, working, all of it monitored and commanded from this very place. And as the cold reality of his past began to sink in, Stanley decided that this... But at the last second, the bucket jumped in and pressed the button to turn on the controls.
Okay.
Stanley gasped in horror. Had this been the bucket's plan all along? To take over the machine and claim the power for itself? How could the bucket have betrayed him like this?
Me
Stanley
traicionaron.
was prepared to throw the bucket away in disgust
Toma por
when
culo.
suddenly an image appeared upon the enormous screen.
Ajá.
Birds. Silly birds.
Ah.
The control buttons became active again.
Ah.
Stanley flipped through one video of silly birds after another.
Ah, pingüino.
And then it dawned on him. This wasn't a mind control facility at all. It was a facility for monitoring and surveilling silly birds all over the world.
Me gusta el
The
pingüino.
mind controls
Silly
were only a
birds.
facade to disguise its true intentions.
A ver qué más hay.
Had the bucket known this all along? Stanley marveled at the metal genius in his hands, the one who had pointed him towards this incredible
Esto me hizo morir.
discovery. Stanley and the bucket never found freedom because they
Pingüino.
spent the rest of their lives here in this place, flipping through live streams of the silliest birds.
No, los
imaginable.
pingüinos no son tontos. Los
Of
pingüinos son
all the possible
bonitos.
paths his life could have taken, this
Que creo que fue
one was
la
sure
traducción de
to
Silly.
be. And Stanley was happy.
Soy feliz, pingüino bonito.
Me vas a acordar la foto del pingüino todo hecho bola. El pingüino gordo.
Vale.
Ok. Última cosa, estos es sin el balde.
Ujú.
Ve a la... donde está la puerta roja y azul.
The meeting room. Yes, that's where everyone would be. Stanley just needed to get to the meeting
La
room,
roja y azul.
and from then on, he would never be alone ever again.
No me acuerdo cómo se acaba eso. Sinceramente.
La puerta roja y azul donde te tiras del este.
When Stanley
De
came
la-
to a set of two open doors,
Que
he
tiras de
entered
la
the door
plataforma
on his
amarilla.
left. This was not the correct way to the meeting room, and Stanley knew it perfectly well. Perhaps he wanted to stop by the employee lounge first, just to admire it. And here it was,
Sí, claro.
the
Admirar.
lounge.
Sí.
But eager to get back
Admirar
to business,
sin comprar
Stanley
una
took the
bebida.
first open door on his left.
Qué lástima que en ninguno de los
Stanley
finales
was
se
so
pudiera
bad
comprar
at
bebida.
following directions, it's incredible he wasn't fired years ago. Look, Stanley, I think perhaps we've gotten off on the wrong foot here. I'm not your enemy, really, I'm not. I realize that investing your trust in someone else can be difficult, but the fact is that the story has been about nothing but you all this time. There's someone you've been neglecting, Stanley. What? Really? I was in the middle of
Me encanta
something
como
you
dice,
had zero
"Really?"
consideration for others. Are you that convinced that I want something bad to happen to you? Why, I don't know how to convince you of this, but I really do want to help you, to show you something beautiful. Look, let me prove it.
Ma,
Let me
¿qué?
prove that I'm on your
Oh.
side. give me a chance. And there it is. The last Stiggly Wiggly. Savor this moment, Stanley. This is a real accomplishment.
Gracias.
This is doing something just for the sake of doing it. Where
Bien.
so many people expect to be rewarded for the most trivial achievements, you
Ya.
have insisted that a job well done is its own reward.
Porque soy una buena
I
persona.
would tell you that I'm proud of you for
Soy una buena
collecting them
chica.
all, but that would be like a reward, and we
De
can't
besos
have
de
that.
futuro.
So, instead I'll just say, it's done.
Ah.
We're all done here.
Hemos terminado.
And now we can go to whatever the hell you were doing before you hunted for figurines.
Ah, vale. Pues jugar a tu juego. Eso es lo...
Reinicia. Olvidé que esto era en rojo. Por un momento pensé que era menú de Hitman ahí.
¿Ya está?
¿Avanza?
Ay, ahora no me dice nada. Uy,
Stanley, I'm sorry, but I have to put a pause on things. It's those figurines. Those figglers.
Ah,
I haven't stopped thinking about them since you nabbed every last one.
Ah.
Wasn't it just the most intrinsically fulfilling moment of your entire life? Didn't it
Supongo.
fill you to the brim with inner richness? Yes, I know we're supposed to be telling a story,
bueno.
but won't you please indulge me with one more trip back to the memory zone? I would love
Sí,
nothing
no,
more
yo...
than to
Memory
revisit the
zone.
figurines. Just one more time.
Ay. Otra vez a este sitio aburrido donde solo dicen, ay, soy genial, somos perfectos, hicimos el juego. Uy. Vale.
Ok.
Ah, no sé, aquí estaba. Bueno,
Here's where it all began.
sí,
The first collectible.
sí.
Back then, we had no idea of how many of them we'd find. Sure, it said 6 right there on the screen, but how could we know for certain?
No
were
sé,
so
tú
innocent.
puedes...
We'll never be like that again, Stanley.
Ya. Pues ya está. ¿Qué quieres? Ah. ¿Dónde?
And here was a second Stanlerine. You found this one all on your own, just by poking around in the warehouse. You did that, Stanley. I'll be honest. Back then, I had no faith in you to find any of them, let alone 6. But you continue to surprise me in all sorts of mundane, unremarkable ways.
Ajá. Oh.
Okay, let's do a little quiz.
Vale.
Which of these rooms was the room you found your third mini Stan? Can you remember?
En esta.
Hey, that's exactly right. It was here, under the stairs. It was the third one.
Sí,
You
tengo
picked
buena
it up,
memoria.
And then after that, you had 3 of them. I'm glad these moments are so crystal clear in your memory, but I shouldn't be surprised. After all, science tells us that it's impossible to forget your third time
¿sí?
doing anything.
Es
No
imposible.
lo creas, le ves cara de científico.
Oh yes, we found a figley in this pink room.
Qué
Well,
bonita.
I can't actually say I remember being in this room, but it's here in the memory zone, so it must have happened.
Ah,
This was the 5th mini Stan, and this one was really something special. It was behind the boss's office. I remember it so clearly. In fact, because this one is particularly special to me, I made a little video to commemorate the occasion. Enjoy.
ah, nice. ¡No! ¿Qué cojones? ¡No! ¿Qué es esto? El Reddit de
Tarde.
Juan.
Sale el Guillem da Fruta en ahí. Stevie del futuro, si editas esto, pon a Guillem da Fruta en el video.
Creo que se le va a olvidar, pero si lo ve, pues lo hará.
Si veo este video y no está en usted, te lo voy a decir en los comentarios.
¡TV del futuro!
No te voy a decir te olvidaste, no te voy a explicar más.
Te olvidaste. Así yo también voy a ir. Te olvidaste.
It's bad, isn't it? I spent a lot of time making that video, but it was 8 minutes I wouldn't have spent.
No se ríen de mi vídeo. Me tomó mucho tiempo hacerlo.
Vale, ¿para dónde? ¿Para acá? Ah,
Memorizo.
memory.
And then, Stanley, then we came to the last collectible, the final figurine, right here by the red and blue doors. This
Sí.
memory is the most distinct and clear in my mind, perhaps
Hombre, no,
because
joder,
it
pues
was the
último.
one that happened more recently than all the others.
Sí.
Who can truly say how the mind works? All I know is that this is the moment where you picked up a Figley and I thought to myself, yes, that's all of them. They're all collected. It was a moment unlike any other. Except for the other moments picking up figurines, which it was exactly like.
Sí, fueron igual. ¿Ahora qué? Da igual. Me gusta el azul.
And then there was no more.
Infinito.
Because we've caught up to the present moment. Nothing left to do but move onward into the future. Goodbye, memory zone.
Ay,
Memorizo.
pasó?
No, I'm not
¿Eh?
done.
Pasó.
I'm not ready to move on.
Memorizo.
Stop the loading screen. Isn't
No,
there some
la
way we
pantalla
can
de
stay
carga,
here,
me
keep
gusta la pantalla de
enjoying
carga.
these figurines?
Oye, el
Let's
hecho.
just go backwards. We'll do the memory zone again from the opposite direction. See how that feels.
Señor, es el helecho. ¿El helecho? No importa. ¿El helecho? Me sigue gustando el azul.
Okay, yes, the room with the red and blue doors. I remember this. I must say, of all the figurines we looked at in our initial tour of the memory zone, this one is the most distinct and clear in my mind. Let's keep going, I want more.
Bueno. Vale.
And here's where I made that video. Don't you remember the video we watched?
¡Ay, ah! No, voy a tener que todo otra vez de poner ahí la cosa.
Sí.
Nah. No me obligue.
Still
Sí,
don't
te
remember
obligo.
the pink room, Stanley. Still no memory of this one. Good room, though. A solid room. These really were a treat to hunt down. You know, if there had been any kind of reward for finding all of these, it really would have muted the intrinsic joy of collecting them. I'm very glad we resisted the temptation. Next one.
Siguiente. Venga. Vamos a quitarle el mono al coso este. Al señor narrador.
Porque le quiere
This
sacar
was
su
our
mono.
second Figley. Don't you remember?
Porque
Yes,
es
I
ilegal
remember
tenerlo
it
en casa.
too. The past is truly a
¿Cómo
wonderful
sabes?
Porque lo
thing.
tiene en su
Why does
casa,
anyone ever choose to leave
¿Y dónde
it?
lo tienes?
Keep going.
en el estudio.
También es ilegal. Tienes que tener la cartilla y todo el rollo para
This
poder
is it.
tenerlo.
The very first
No
one
lo
we
tiene en su
found
casa ni en
the
el
exhibit
estudio.
where I introduced you to the figurine.
Lo tienen de
Oh, I want
Memorizo.
more memories. Stanley. I want to keep going. What else is there? What came before this?
No sé, pero me quiero ir. ¡Vámonos! Ah, mira. Estamos aquí otra vez. Ah, mira. Cuando entramos aquí.
Look, it's the terrible new content that we were originally sold on. I remember hating it back then, but time does put a rosy filter on everything.
¿Ya puedo
In fact,
saltar?
I dare say I'm actually quite fond of it now.
Aún no.
Fun the past is. I want more.
De hecho, eso lo puedo dejar
more
para...
memories.
Mira, creo que puedo hacer un directo más solo para mostrarte algo, pero, pero ya para la otra.
Vale.
Ahora voy a venir con
The
una
two
lista,
doors.
por si acaso.
Who could have forgotten
Vale.
that? A classic memory, this one.
Derecha.
And before everything else, there was your office.
Sí, mi oficina.
Is there anything else? Was there something that came before your office?
Mi vida.
There's something I feel I can remember. I can remember.
I can remember. Na, 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 na.
Yes, I'm remembering something now. I remember before this whole story got started. Back then I was different. I used to make big decisions. I was passionate. I was skeptical. I weighed each decision with profound thoughtfulness. And then somewhere along the way, I stopped making decisions. I became lazy. And I came up with, well, Came up with a character named Stanley to do my thinking for me. He would make the decisions, he would decide which way to go. I would cheer him on as he collected
Pues si me decías que tenía que ir a la izquierda y cuando decía yo quiero ir a la derecha, tú decías no, no tienes que ir a la izquierda, tienes que ir a la izquierda. Porque yo digo que ir a la izquierda.
And Stanley really did make for a wonderful
Era
companion,
kayfabe.
even if he was a fiction. But I suppose it's grown old. I want to think for myself again. I want to go back to how it used to be. Yes.
Qué
I
nerviosa
can
me
be
pone
on
que
my
solo hizo
own
un
again.
dedo.
I can do it. I'll be stronger this time. I'll take care of myself. I don't need Stanley anymore. Oh, but he truly was so much fun to play with. You know what? Since we're in the memory zone, how about one more
Memory
good
zone?
memory? Let's go back just once and give Stanley one more run of the office, and then I'll
Remember.
retire him for good. I did enjoy telling his story so very much. Okay, here we go.
Vale.
This is the story of a man named Stanley.
Perfecto. Con esto vamos a irnos a tomar por culo. Salir al menú. Vale, pues espero que os haya gustado este vídeo de hoy. Gracias a la gente de voz por haber estado conmigo. Y nos vemos en un próximo directo y vídeo con más. Dale like, favoritos, todo eso. Y eso.
Sí,
Y eso.
ya se le está.
Y eso.
Y eso.
Suena tonto triste y es.
Ya se rompió.
Chane.
Te rompiste
Compa-
más también.
Ay.
hacer las cosas bien en el sitio del señor que os envió, ¿eh?